Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. The Kitchen Table series returns once more with deck tech number 65, and in today's video, we're going to talk about a mono-white life gain deck. What's up, MTGBC? You know who you are. You are the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to the Kitchen Table series as we are going to unveil deck tech number 65 in the channel's longest running content series. All right, so let's get right down to it. We have a mono white life gain deck. So we're going to start as we normally do during these series with the land base. And there's not going to be much to talk about here. We're running mono white. So we're going to run 18 basic planes. That is going to be it, folks. Just 18 basic planes. And that is going to be the land base. That is going to be the mana base of this life gain deck. There it is. And that's all there is to talk about. Now let's get on with the creatures. Like I said, this is a life gain deck. So let's start with the full playset of Soul's Attendant. It's only going to cost us 1 white mana to cast. It's only a 1/1. However, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, we may gain 1 life. I think we will gain that 1 life. And notice the text, it's whenever another creature. So this is also triggered by our opponent's creatures. 4 copies of Soul's Attendant. Next up, we have Soul Warden. You're going to have a little bit of deja vu here as we have a human cleric that costs 1 white mana. That's a 1/1 and gains us 1 life whenever another creature enters the battlefield. 4 copies of Soul Warden. Taking the jump from a mana value of 1 to 2, the next playset of creatures we're going to talk about, it is a Johnny's Pridemate. 2/2 cat soldier for 1 and a white mana. Whenever we gain life, we put a +1/+1 counter on a Johnny's Pridemate. 4 copies nestled snugly between Soul's Attendant and Soul Warden, because you know how big and how out of control a Johnny's Pridemate can get when they're sandwiched between those two lovely ladies. All right, next up, full playset CMC of 2. We're going Daxos, Blessed by the Sun. It's got 2 white mana and its mana cost. Its power is 2. Its toughness is determined by our devotion to white. So however many number of white mana symbols we have in permanents we control will be Daxos's toughness. The floor will be 2, of course, because of his 2 white mana symbols. However, in this deck, he has the propensity to get very, very big toughness very, very fast. More importantly, however, whenever another creature enters a battlefield under our control or it dies, we're going to gain 1 life. So this isn't any creature like Soul Warden or Soul's Attendant. These are just going to be creatures that we control. However, gaining that life is going to go a long way to us winning the game. 4 copies of Daxos, Blessed by the Sun. Next up, leaving the 2 drops to move to the 3 drops, we're going to play with an entire playset of Linden, the Steadfast Queen. She's a 3/3 for 3 white mana. She has Vigilance, and whenever a white creature we control attacks, we're going to gain 1 life. All of our creatures are white. They're all going to attack at some point, especially when we get to later on in this deck tech. 4 copies of Linden, the Steadfast Queen. Just be careful. She is legendary, similar to Daxos, so do not accidentally cast an additional copy of her if you've already got one in play. And next, and this is going to round out our creatures, we're going to play with 1 creature less than a full play set. And that's just because we need to get the 4th copy. And that's going to be 3 copies of Archangel of Thune. Notice first that this is not a legendary creature. So this is one that we want to get out there multiple copies as quickly as possible. It's a 3/4 flying. It's a 3/4 flyer with lifelink for 3 and 2 white mana. Whenever we gain life, we're going to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. Now you're starting to see the purpose of this deck. We're going to gain the life, we're going to use the life to make our creatures bigger, and then we're going to trample over our opponents with non-trampling creatures. I don't know why I said trample. It was the first word that came to my mind. 3 copies of Archangel of Thune, with the 4th one on the way whenever it becomes available. All right, those are the creatures. So now let's talk about a few removal spells that we have included in this deck, just as a way in which to make sure that we can optimize our win conditions. We're going to play with 3 copies of Swords to Plowshares, one of the greatest removal spells ever made. It's instant speed, 1 white mana, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power, and do not think for a moment that we can't use these Swords to Plowshares on our own creatures as a way in which to swing in for that lethal combat damage. Done it before, and I'll do it again. 3 copies of Swords to Plowshares. And just in case there are any creatures out there, any non-creatures out there that are giving us any problems, we're going to pull a couple copies of Generous Gift into this deck as well. Instant speed, 2 and a white. We're going to destroy target permanent. Its controller is gifted with a 3/3 green elephant creature token, but we're not going to be worried about a 3/3 because all of our creatures are going to be so much better than that. All right, now we're going to get into the rest of our non-creature spells. These are the spells that we're going to use to help tie things up, to synergize and optimize everything we're trying to do in this life gain engine. And the first card we're going to talk about here is 1 copy of Dawn of Hope. It's an enchantment for 1 and white mana. Whenever we gain life, we can pay 2, and if we do, we're going to draw a card. And that may be something that's going to be important for us because, as you notice here, we have an awful lot of cards so far that are very, very small mana value. And that's going to mean we're going to fly through our hand and potentially run out of gas very quickly. So a card like Dawn of Hope will allow us to draw some cards each time we gain life. And as an additional bonus, we could, if we wanted to, pay 3 and a white to create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. The 3 and a white may seem a little overcosted for an ability like this. However, if you pair this with the life gain engine we have going on over here with Soul's Attendant, Soul Warden, Ajani's Pridemate, Archangel of Thune, suddenly that 3 and a white doesn't look that bad. Next up, we are going to play with 3 copies of Honor of the Pure. It's an enchantment for 1 and a white mana. White creatures we control get +1/+1. Not Crusade. Crusade is 2 white mana that gives all white creatures +1/+1. We're not going to help our opponents. It's not going to happen. 3 copies of Honor the Pure, because only our creatures are going to get that anthem effect. Let our opponents get their own anthems. All right, our next non-creature spell, we have a full playset of Spectral Procession. Sorcery speed, it has the hybrid mana value of either 1 white mana or 2 colorless mana stretched across 3 mana symbols. Of course, this is just a mono white deck and all we have are basic planes, so this spell is only ever going to cost us 3 white mana. And when we cast it, we're going to create 3 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. Imagine the synergy of having our life gain engine revving at full capacity on our side of the battlefield when we suddenly cast a Spectral Procession of 4 copies because we can't play with 12. All right, we're just about done here. We've got 3 copies of Unbreakable Formation. Instant speed, 2 and a white. Creatures we control gain indestructible until end of turn. This is a great card to pop off during combat, particularly if we're using our creatures as sort of chump blocking. That way they will not die and we can prevent any non-protection or any non-trampling combat damage to come through by casting Unbreakable Formation. However, defensive purposes aside, if we so choose to cast this during our main phase, we will put a +1/+1 counter on each of our creatures and they gain vigilance in addition to the indestructibility this turn. So this we can consider to be an ultimate win condition. We have our army of creatures out there. They've been built up with +1/+1 counters by Ajani's Pridemate, by Archangel of Thune. We pop off an unbreakable formation, giving them all vigilance and indestructible, so we can send them into combat and still hold them back for the potential for one of our other opponents to send during their combat steps. And they all have +1/+1 counters, vigilance, and indestructible. It could pretty much be lights out for that player or players. All right, we have just 3 cards remaining, a 1 copy for each one. The next one is Cradle of Vitality, is an enchantment for 3 and a white. Whenever we gain life, we may pay 1 and a white mana, and if we do, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature for each 1 life we gain. So again, this just helps us to further optimize our life gain and +1/+1 counter engine. Next up, the one and only planeswalker in the deck. It is Ajani, Strength of the Pride. 2 and 2 white. It comes into play with 5 loyalty counters. We can +1 Ajani, and we gain life equal to the number of creatures we control, plus the number of planeswalkers we control. So at a minimum, we'll gain just 1 life because we'll have Ajani, Strength of the Pride, on our side of the battlefield. However, we're really looking to make sure we have other creatures so that we can really get the biggest bang for our loyalty counter buck. We can -2 Ajani to create a 2/2 white cat soldier creature token named Ajani's Pridemate with, can you believe it? Whenever we gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Ajani's Pridemate. That sounds awfully familiar. Oh, that's right. We've already got 4 copies of that guy right there. Ajani's Pridemate will allow us to make those token copies as well. As a bigger, even more impactful bonus for Ajani here, for a 0 ability, a 0 ability in a dedicated life gain deck, check out what Ajani's Big Bang is. If we have at least 15 more life than our starting life total, which should not and is not hard to do with this deck. If we have 15 more life than our starting total, exile Ajani's Strength of the Pride and each artifact and creature our opponents control. So Ajani will sacrifice himself to rid the board of all of our opponent's creatures and artifacts as long as we have 35 life or more. Ajani, Strength of the Pride. You've got my pride, buddy boy. You got it. All right, last card. Card number 60. It's an instant. We have Heliods Intervention. X and double white. We get to choose one. We can destroy X target artifacts and or enchantments, which is a very, very valuable removal spell, particularly if your metagame is really hung up on artifact enchantment combos. However, if that's not the case, and specific to this deck, we can have target player gain twice X life instead. For the purposes of this life gaining and +1/+1 counter granting deck, we're most likely going to choose the second mode. All right, MTG BC, there you have it, a mono white life gain deck. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.